All right, so welcome to another show for our podcast. I'm your host Vivek Bhaskaran. I'm also joined with Romy Mahajan, and today we have a very interesting guest. We have our first millennials founder, I guess, of a company. So Romy, we've kind of gone down the chain and said like we're gonna find the youngest founder we know, and we're gonna bring him on board. So Ritvij Gautam, Rit, we call him Rit. He's the CEO of a company called TryMyUI. Welcome to the show, Rit.
Hey, pleasure to be here, man. Big fan of all the previous episodes. Glad to be like the first injection of young blood into the operation. So
True.
really excited to be here.
I, exactly. How old are you again, bud?
I turn 28 next week, man.
So you are truly a millennial. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Do you even do it? Do you even do any work? I'm just
Uh,
kidding. That's the joke. That's the joke. Okay, never mind. Okay. So tell us a little bit about, Trauma UI. First, let's start off with the company. Tell us a little bit about Trauma UI. What does it do? And then we'll jump into your story with it.
well, the the name Try My UI is like it's the idea is like we try your UI. We help you figure out how usable your websites and apps are for your target demographic users. So we're a remote user testing company, and we have a panel of roughly like a million users, and we have them demographically curated from things as generic as age and gender to more specific things: median household income, social media usage, people that smoke cigarettes on Wednesdays, whatever it is, right? And you can find your target demographic user. We'll have them go through a set of tasks on your app and website and record their screen and voice and give you a whole bunch of analytics to help you figure out why your user experience is good or bad. Yeah, that's
Awesome.
what we do.
That's a good 18-second elevator pitch.
So that's awesome.
But
Thanks.
I think really well put. So this panel, um, what do I get? What's the output I get? Right? Do I get kind of video of them doing it, or do I get the aggregate kind of total of their comments? All of the above.
So all of the above. So you get a screen recording and their voice recording. So the whole point is we want these people to vocalize their user experience as they're going through it. So tell you about what they're thinking, like, hey, this is confusing to me, or I'm trying to create an account and I can't find the button, or whatever it is. Right? We want them to be able to give you their frame of mind in the moment, and then we also have like a post-test survey. We're recording their screen and their voice as well as like their face. So we're working on some cool stuff with like emotional recognition using your camera, some MLAI stuff. So the whole point is we want to do as much as we can to give you the user's view. That's our tagline: get the user's view. We want to give you like, hey, what is it like to be a user of your product? Right?
awesome.
And that
Uh, Awesome. Tell me a little bit about tell us. I know it. I know the story, but tell our viewers a little bit about how you became the CEO of, or at least how you founded Trauma UI.
Yeah. Uh, before I jump to that, I just can't believe I've been doing this shit for 6 years, man. Like, yeah, time, like time straight up flew by. And I so graduated from college in 2014. So I studied physics and philosophy, which means I'm like a really nice conversationalist, but I was probably going to work at a coffee shop. Uh, and I was interviewing for gigs because I was like, okay, I'm like kind of good at math, and that's where I came across you actually through the context of IdeaScale. So I was interviewing for IdeaScale, and we were chatting, and midway through that, in the email exchange, you were like, "Hey, go find out about this tool called Try My UI, and give me a business plan if we would integrate it, acquire it, and integrate it into our existing business of IdeaScale." Or Question Pro. Like, so you gave me like these options. I was like, okay, I still thought this was very much a part of the IdeaScale interview. Came together with a plan, showed up with a slide deck. I was wearing a full like suit and tie. I walk into the room and you've got like just a shirt, like unbuttoned, wearing like the loafers with marijuana socks. Yes, never forget. And I was like, oh, I think I'm gonna be a tad overdressed for this occasion. And I sit down and we chat for a while. And at the end of like 2 hours, you're like, hey, listen, I could either give you the job at IdeaScale, but I don't think you'd like that. Or I bought Try My UI last week and you can come on and run that. And I remember thinking, like, this guy knows I'm fucking 21, right? Like, he knows that I don't know shit about running a company. And your words, and I remember this so well, fuck it, you seem smart, we'll figure it out.
You
So,
know, it's
uh,
that is Vivek's superpower, though. He can see these things and put two pieces together where other people may not
yeah.
be able to. So Rith, you studied philosophy and physics where?
Claremont McKenna in Southern California.
Okay, okay. And so they have physics out there, huh, in Claremont?
Yeah, yeah. They got a. It was, at least when I went there, it was
I thought
called
at
Joint.
Claremont only Harvey Mudd did physics, man. Way out at Claremont.
Well, no, actually. So Hobby Mudd is like the only engineering college.
Okay.
Everyone else is like liberal arts. So like physics, just like pure physics, falls under liberal arts. So they had like a pretty
So
great physics department, the
that
joint
tells me a
science
little bit about
department.
their view of physics if it falls under liberal arts. But anyway, listen. Anyway, on the Try My UI thing, it's super interesting to me because I do have one clarification, right? Which is, you say, let the users tell you their story or tell you their, but this panel's not my users, right? It is like if I have a website and I want to get only my existing customers to give me feedback, as opposed to a random set of people, even if you say demographics or whatever. How do I get my customers, people I know that they're people who are already engaged with me, to give me deeper feedback than just a new person?
So great question, right? So when I say like these are feedback from your users, that could be interpreted one of two ways, right? Like one is like the super literal way of, hey, these are literally like my existing users and customers, and you can get that feedback from TryMyUI as well. So you can build a TryMyUI test and just send whoever you want a link, and they can set it up and launch a TryMyUI test, and it would record their screen and their voice as they go through the task, etc. But sort of the broader sense of when I say your users, it's like suppose you have an e-commerce store, it's like who shops at your store, right? And this is like a target demographic, like user persona, and we find those people from the panel.
As I hear you talk about this, Rith, and you're obviously a classic entrepreneur because you're so articulate and passionate about your company, and obviously from what I know from Vivek and otherwise, you've grown it quite a bit. What's the average engagement size? And I'm guessing that it's below the threshold where, should any company really be doing this? I mean, shouldn't any company, if they're going to spend, let's say, $50,000 on a website, or if they're running, let's say, 10% of their business through the website, or 10% of their engagement through their website, shouldn't they spend the $5,000 or $10,000 or $3,000 or whatever it is to kind of improve that? I mean, what am I missing that that you're not $100 million company already?
So great question, right? And I think that this industry, right? Like, we need to kind of understand like how usability testing and user research became its own thing. Like this was rolled under HCI at one point, right? Human computer interaction, which was then also like, it was just like one course that you took in like your CS degree.
Right.
And now it's like this thing that you can go and study by itself and get a degree in, etc. So like our understanding of it has only improved, like understanding of UX and user research, and the necessity of it has only improved in, I'd say, like my lifetime, actually, like the last 20 years, like 25 years, right? Like that's when like the UX industry is really kicked up. And that too, really in the last 15 years is where there's been this kind of call or this clear link between UX and like actual like bottom line revenue. So a lot of people have built sites time and time again, right? Like without.
Wait, I want to interrupt you. Can you correlate UX to bottom line revenue? Is that everybody talks about it? Is there any empirical evidence to say like if Ali Bank has a better UX, they can truly drive more revenue?
Sure. Let me answer this question in two ways, right? Like one is just a simple kind of understanding of the ecosystem, right? Like unless you are like the only person that provides the service you do. And I know every entrepreneur will swear up and down that they are the only ones that provide the one thing that they do. But realistically, everyone's like building these products in a competitive environment, right? And as a user, right, I have the option between you and like 10 other sites like you that probably provide me roughly the same service, right? And my ability, my ease of use, like the ability for me to adopt your product, use it, get familiar with it, all of those things actually impact realistically whether or not I'll make a purchase, right? So that's kind of like the bird's eye view argument for how like UX is, because if I can't figure you out, or if your user experience frustrates me, I will find someone else whose user experience.
I think everything is good, but is there any empirical evidence that you guys have found to say like UX correlates to revenue? Mm-hmm.
Right. So the second way I want to answer this is very simple. Like this case study we did, like an e-commerce case study, and it was this is one case study from a larger data set I presented at South by Southwest last year. We were just talking about e-commerce UX trends. Is this one company, what they did is they sold trees, right? Like so trees for your backyard, trees for your front yard, trees for offices, any place you see greenery. These were like one of the big vendors for this thing. And what they found out was they found that they were having this unusually high like bounce rate from their website, and they had no idea why. They were spending the money in the ads, right? They were like, look, we have all of these people showing up, but for some reason people just aren't buying stuff. So they ran tests with us, and what they found out is their search function was just completely broken, or rather, like the way they'd indexed the items in their store were just completely not like how the user searches for items that they want in their store. So I'll give it. So for trees, they had them indexed by like specific like tree designations, like coniferous, deciduous, right? Stuff like that, terms like that. And their users were searching for things like big, small, indoor, outdoor,
Yeah.
less water, right? Like
Right.
that kind of stuff. And they just hadn't realized. So you could argue that their indexing was actually like, hey, this is what it's supposed to be because it's trees, and this is scientifically like the right way to put it. But that's not what their users were looking for at all. So what they found out was searches that were happening on their site were yielding like zero results, even though they definitely had products that fit them, because they
Got it.
had an
Makes
index
sense.
by what their
And so
actual
you
users
guys
were looking for.
got it. So
So
and then you
after
guys
they
run a
made
user.
changes, they saw like 142% increase in revenue and an 88% increase in conversion, right?
Got it.
And this is in perpetuity, right? This is not like investing in like ad technology where it's like, oh,
Okay.
you pay into ads and you get the traffic, but the moment you stop paying into ads, you stop getting the traffic. This is like, oh, you figure this out, you make the change, and this change pays off in perpetuity,
Yeah,
right?
so given that Rith, I mean, the tree example I think is awesome, right? Because here's an existing company, it's not that they're doing zero business, they're doing not as much as they should, and you come in and what are the thresholds? I mean, like below which or above which, below which I don't really need to do this, right? I got some brochureware up on the side, it's not really driving anything, versus shoot, I'm e-commerce, everything is through it. What are the thresholds involved in sort of saying, look, you need to try my UI round of consultation slash, you know, work.
Right. So good question, right? I'd say the interface needs to be something that is important to your business, right? Like, so if I create like a cat blog, right? If I'm like, hey, this is Rit's cat blog, odds of me like running usability tests on my cat blog slim to none, because it's like, look, I'm just writing about cats and this is really more for me and this thing. But if I have users, right, and it's not just e-commerce. One of our largest customers is a bank. Like, we got banks that are like, hey, we have all of this complex insurance documentation, right, or like complex documentation about this financial package, about applying for a home loan, and we want to make sure that this content is usable, like, or like this content is something that users are able to easily access and parse through and understand. So anyone that has an interface, company agnostic of vector, and this interface, like, it could be mobile, it could be an app, it could be a website, but this interface is used for you to like either like drive leads, drive revenue, drive traffic. You actually care about what's happening on this interface. You need to be running tests, right? And this idea of a threshold is like, oh, it's too early to run tests. That's actually something that's quickly becoming debunked as well, because there's this real cost,
Right.
right, of making a change to your site. It's very easy for me to change like a picture of a prototype on Photoshop, right, than it is for me to go in and like rewrite lines of code. So you want to test at this stage because it's the cost of changing things is so much easier than testing and changing stuff waiting till it goes live, accruing a bunch of UX debt, and then testing there.
That's a great point.
I have a question. So who are you guys selling to typically? Are you selling to VPs of product, VPs of engineering, VPs of who's your
So
target buyer? Who's your target
I
buyer?
think you nailed it, right? So we're selling to the product teams, and then who within the product team really depends on the size of the team. Oftentimes we'll be selling to like the VP of product, etc. And at like slightly bigger companies, it'll be just the director of UX or the lead UX designer or user researcher. But typically we're selling to product teams, and there's a cross-functional use of this. So typically we'll have like a product manager, a couple of UX designers, and a user researcher all accessing the platform at the same time, because they get different things out of this data, right? For the user researcher, they're like, kind of validating assumptions, etc. For the designer, they're able to see like, okay, where in their designs things are broken, etc. Sometimes a front-end developer will show up and see like, okay, if we were running a test on the live side, what were the exact steps the user took to break something, right? And they'll use that to replicate that. And the PM is just kind of, able to see, okay, hey, how well is like our product roadmap coming together, right? Because you're
Got it.
testing iteratively at
Okay.
every sprint.
Got it. Let's talk about money. Let's talk about revenue. I know how are you guys doing in terms of revenue through COVID, without COVID? What's the situation for you guys?
Sure. I mean, we kind of crushed it last year. If I can be a little non-humble, in 2018.
This is America, Red. You don't have to be humble. You can
And
say
since
whatever
when
you
has he
want.
ever been humble? I've never seen him humble. But anyway, go ahead.
I know. Yeah, no, I was joking. Yeah, we definitely crushed it last year. So 2018, we did about 550K in revenue, and the interesting thing is, I actually fired my sales guys, and in 2019, we did $1.2 million in revenue.
There you go. So you fired your sales guys and you doubled
double
revenue.
my revenue.
But
That's
so hold on, let's catch up there because this is scaring me a little bit. Do you find those correlative events, firing the guys and over doubling revenue, or is that sort of humorous? In other words, was it the strategy that changed or the humans involved? Right, I'm trying to understand.
A bit of both. So I mean, that's just like a nice tagline, right? To say I fired my sales guys and doubled my revenue. That's like a cool thing. People listen to me after I say that. But really, the firing of the sales guys was kind of us understanding like what were the problems or like what was inhibiting revenue, right? Like it's kind of like the mythical man month thing. Like we were just like, oh, let's just hire 2 sales guys because that's what we're supposed to do at this stage. And we realized that, look, I know for a fact no one can sell my product better than me, right? Like I get on a sales call. If I'm the guy on the sales call with you, the odds of us closing are like really high. And so I was like, okay, I can sell this thing.
With Rich, that doesn't scale infinitely, right? You only have.
It does not, right? It absolutely does not, right? So, and this is, I think, like, the essence of like bootstrapping, right? You have choices to make. I think like at the essence of bootstrapping, I don't learn anything. It's about choices, right? It's about where do you deploy your resources and where do you make the push.
So you're pro-choice.
Right. Yeah, I am pro-choice.
Okay.
Right. For us, right, like we had this kind of eat what we make sense, and I had a certain amount of money set aside, and this amount of money either pays for 2 sales guys, right, or 2 sales guys in Salt Lake, or it pays for us like paying for certain like chatbot softwares, certain like optimizations we make to our site, etc. It pays for like these things that will increase the lead flow. Right. And I made the mistake. Like, look, I straight up hired the sales guys right off the bat because I was like, this is what we need. Because I understand that I can't just sell forever. Right. Yeah. Like I can't be the only salesperson forever. But the goal in front of me is like, hey, look, how do we get to the million? Right. And for me, it's like, look, if we get there, from there, figuring out how to like retool the model to make it scalable is not going to suddenly hurt my revenue. Right. But my goal was getting there. And that was the focal point. So the choice was, okay, let's get to the million. We'll fucking figure everything else out later. Right.
Right. Got it.
So do that end, right?
So you guys like, interesting, Romy, kind of interesting thought process over here is that, try to scale too early, right? Like you could, one guy, you're right. Like, it's not going to scale long term, but one guy can definitely sell, 500-600 grand. I mean, as a CEO, you can sell, almost 800
I think
grand.
That's a great tagline, right? That the passionate founder is always going to be better at that, right? No matter what. And that person can get up to, a certain number of units of whatever, right?
Right.
You could say, look, I work, and I'm a founder, I work 12 hours a day, right? And so 8 of them were spent selling, but I know I've got to go down to 4 one day because I got other stuff to do. So I've got to get an automated way of doing it, be marketing led or be sales led, right? Or let virality take over and let my customers, sell on my behalf, right?
Right.
Advocacy, right? So it sounds like you're playing with those levers and you find a good chemistry.
Right. So you're absolutely right? So the levers I was playing with were like, okay, my capacity to sell is something I am intimately familiar with. My co-founder's capacity to sell is also something I'm very familiar with. Both of us can get on a call and sell pretty easily.
Who's your co-founder?
His name is Tim Rotolo, went to college with me. Shout out, Timmy. Awesome. He's in Salt Lake right now.
This kind of connects back to Mike Doherty's point from Jelly, right? Around you need kind of sometimes 2 peas in a pod to talk through things and depend on, right?
Yeah. And depend on each other, right? I think Rith and Tim have kind of like, have kind of like obviously scaled the business
Right.
ridiculously fast, and they're really dependent on each other to kind of complement each other in terms of
I'm
executing.
sorry to ask so many questions, but we typically, Vivek and I, try to keep this a little shorter, 15, 18, 20
Hmm.
minutes. But it occurs to me, and maybe you've tried this, maybe you haven't, but if I'm a digital agency and I just got a huge contract, right, for to do a website for someone, whether it's a government or installation or
Yeah.
company, and even if I have UI people on my payroll,
Hmm.
what's the harm in sticking in a try my UI kind of thing near the last mile of the process, just to get that another view, and because I've got $1 million website project,
Yeah.
why not spend 1% of it or 2% of it? In other words, are you working with these agencies, and are you getting any traction?
So absolutely, we work with a lot of agencies, right? Like I'd say, like actually selling to agencies would be like one pillar, right? So it's either like product teams, etc., like teams that own their own products, and the other part of it is it would be like agencies. So they're like also product teams in a sense, like the UX designers, product managers, etc., but they're not working on their own product. They work with the agency model. And you're absolutely right, right? I think there's this a while back, right? This is like 4 years ago. I'd had a chat with someone, and we were talking about the concept of the hippo, right? The highest paid person's opinion.
Right.
And when you work, like, when you have the designer client relationship, a lot of the things when you're building a new product is about like convincing your client, right? So you're selling two ways. Like one is, okay, you got to make this thing usable for your users, etc., but you also got to convince your client that the changes you made actually impacted the UX in the way they wanted it to, right? And oftentimes, like, absent any sort of data around that, right, it just starts becoming a conversation about opinion, right? And the only
Right.
time you accrue data on it is after you've shipped the project and you've
That's
had like,
that's
over 2 months had like 500,000 users
right.
visit, and you're like, oh shit, it's actually broken,
Right.
right? So there has to be a better way.
Right.
So a lot of agencies use us not just to like make sure that their designs are powerful, etc., but they use us almost as a record of like,
A
hey, we're
validation
testing.
model, a validation
Yeah,
model,
before,
realistically.
it's a validation model. Before they
So
do any work
I
on the
love it.
client side, they'll
I love it.
test with us once,
This
then
is
they'll go make some changes, then they'll test their changed version, then they'll iterate again and test again, and then they'll show the client like, look, here's where you were when you started, right? This is what your average super Q score was, or sus score was. Here's what your task usability average was, or task duration was this high, and now we made these changes, and here's where you are next, and here's where you are next. And that really makes it an
really
empirical conversation as opposed to
are
opinion
you
based.
gonna hit 2 this year?
Well, I think so, right? Like I think the challenge, like
You paused
so we've
over
got,
there, Red. How much are you gonna hit? Come on, give me a simple answer, yes or no.
I mean, this is the
shit, I didn't know
Bootcast,
this was
man.
a board meeting, bro. Like,
This is the Bootcast.
It's
no,
a board meeting and it's a fucking podcast. So answer is either you're gonna hit it or you're not gonna hit it.
no, it's gonna be tough. I'd say we're gonna get to like 1.7 easily.
That's fine.
I think the
Good
challenge
enough.
would,
Good enough. Call it good. Call it
right?
the
Yeah,
300K
I
is
think
gone
COVID
after the
COVID
COVID economy.
definitely
Yeah.
COVID
COVID took
definitely
300K out
shafted
of
us a
you.
little bit, right?
Hey,
It's
but you got
interesting,
a
right?
but you got a PPP loan, right? So
Yeah, we
Donald
did.
Trump.
We did.
Yeah, okay, there you
Uh,
go. The U.S. government helped you out a little bit.
yeah.
So
Hey, I'm a minority hire in my company, bro. Like I gotta keep everyone employed.
fair
Well,
enough. Fair
yeah.
enough.
Well, this is, I mean, Rit, it's your passion is amazing, and the product seems incredible. In fact, one of the things I know both Vivek and I do off sometimes after these podcasts is we get on our machine right away and start sending ideas to people
Yeah,
because of what transpired here. So you incited me to certainly think about getting you involved in a bunch of stuff that I've been seeing recently. So
awesome.
yeah,
Always
Okay.
welcome.
yeah.
And one last piece of, I mean, kind of in terms of advice, right? I mean, we talked to the CEO from Social Pilot, and he had an interesting. They sell into, again, marketing agencies, not research agencies,
Hmm.
but marketing agencies. So they literally like have built some features that are very targeted towards an agency buyer effectively. So
Hmm.
from a product perspective, and they're getting a lot of traction because of that, because they built, not just kind of operational features. So they have things like manage 185 Twitter accounts. So only
Right.
agencies need to manage 185 Twitter accounts.
Yeah.
So when you actually have 185 Twitter accounts, how do you manage that? That itself is
Right.
a problem. There's specific problems that agencies have, and if you can solve for that, then you can create a kind of that you can solidify that vertical in that direction and kind of create a moat over there that is specifically targeted towards towards agencies. With that, we will. Anything else, Romy? Do you have anything else?
And I really enjoyed this. I really did.
Okay, good.
It was
Awesome. Thank
fun.
you. Thank you, Rid, for kind of being a sport and allowing
Yeah,
us
dude.
to kind of like have a boxing match with you. But that's that's fun. Thank you.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
my
All right,
pleasure.
take it easy, guys. Bye.
See you guys. Bye.